hope all of you are ready. I can hear. Just a minute, friends. All right. Can all of you hear me very clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're
Yes.
clearly audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Loud and clear.
Yes,
All of
perfect.
you are also clearly audible. A couple of things. I will quickly summarize what we did the last time in terms of the last two slides of what we learned were left. We look at the process of cognitivism, and then we'll go on to a new topic, which is very interesting and very actually close to what all of us feel when we are learning, especially when we are learning a complicated subject. All right? Or we are learning in a complicated environment, whichever way you take it. We have all been through this at some point of time in our learning cycle, and we will all be going through this at some point of time in our learning cycle because we all continue to be learners in due course of time. A couple of ground rules. These are suggestions from, or rather, even my own suggestions that in order that we complete in the required time, which is 1 hour session, may I request that whoever volunteers to speak up, I will not repeat over and over again. Please keep your contribution to 30 seconds only. All right, whenever you speak about something. And if possible, give others a chance to speak after you have spoken, once or twice. The intention that everyone interacts and everyone feels part of the class. We are all intelligent people. We are all very experienced people. And some of you have a lot to share. That's the reason I say please share. If I continue talking, you may not like it all the time. But I hope we are all in the spirit of the learning game. So, friends, uh, we learned something the last time, and I'm going to go back to that just to the last slide. We looked at cognitive learning, and we said that cognitive learning is about uh, getting knowledge. All right, getting knowledge. And this time, I thought we look at what are the processes, cognitive learning, key processes in cognitive learning. Are you game to learn that? Are you ready? Yes, no, you can put it in your chat box.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You
Yes, ma'am.
can give me a thumbs up signal, either which way it is. All right. And friends, do allow me to complete the session briefing, slide briefings, because it will make for better learning and better examinations for all of you. All right. So what are we looking at? I think we stopped here the last time. Doesn't matter even if it is a repetition. So there are some key processes in cognitive learning. When you say people learn knowledge, it has to go through a particular cycle. So some of the key process over here is one you call it attention. Is your attention on the subject to be learned? And all of us know, I think, that you know how the attention deficit happens in the class. Okay, we want to listen, but there are 10 other things that our mind is going into. And ultimately, it comes down to our energy to learn, which helps us to focus. I'm going to joke a little over here. How much or how good a breakfast have we had in the morning or in the afternoon? Too much breakfast and too much eating can take your attention away and take it to the sleep mode. And too little to eat will make you think of samosas and whatever else so that you can eat and then you can think about it. So, therefore, our ability to focus on relevant information. Also important that we focus on information that is relevant, not just anything. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. When we look at metacognition, you will think of this, that are we focusing on relevant information, or are we focusing on something else altogether, which we should not? Um, Again, to make the session slightly lighter, I always tell my trainees, especially people who are about to become trainers, that think of what you're wearing. Because a lot of times when you're making a presentation, the audience's attention is more towards the color of your outfit and your hair and what you're carrying with you, sometimes your jewelry, sometimes your finger rings, and even your nail polish. So, attention to the right thing, to the knowledge is very important. Second thing, we're talking about how you process information. The information is given to us, or rather, it is presented to us, and we take it in. We take it in. You call that an input. And you have to understand it, you have to store it, and whenever you require. For example, if you're given, let's say, a training, I go back to my favorite topic, Excel training. You learn all the formulae over there, but when your superior asks you to make a report or analyze a particular process, you need to be able to remember and recall all the formulae that were given to you and use them at that point of time. So, retrieval and processing of the information so that you bring out the right results. We have all heard of memory and we love talking about memory. So, there is something called short term memory and long term memory. So therefore, when you say short-term memory, are we able to remember things just because at that point of time, okay, something is important to us. After a particular information has been used, maybe that information is not required, so it gets deleted from the mind. Long-term memory. For something to remember or to remain in our long-term memory, it needs a systematic process of learning and training. The trainer needs to put in extra time, extra effort, and the right method. And the trainee also needs to completely put in attention and understand it in the right context so that it remains in the long term memory. Now, we all remember something terrible that happened to us, all of you, right? We all remember a bad experience which we had, it remains with you for life. Somewhere deep down, we felt pain. It could have been emotional pain, it could have been mental pain, or even physical pain, or the physical effort that we put in. Now, that will remain in our minds and in our memory for a very long time. I would say long term memory. All right. So, your ability to, learn and your own ability to retain that content. And for that, what you need is practice. So, if you want your trainees to remember the cognitive information or whatever it is, you need to put them through practice or rereading of that particular information. I hope I'm making sense to all of you, my dear friends. I hope I'm
Yes,
making
yes.
sense. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
I'm able
Then,
to connect.
yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Then you come to what you call as retrieval. Not just enough to store the information in your short term and long term memory, but whenever you need to extract it from your memory, I would rather call it extraction. Or it's like, I knew it, but where is it? I just can't remember it right now. It happens to us with words. We like a particular word and we remember and we learn out so many words. But when you need to use it, now tell me, when do you need to use words? I'm giving you an example over here. When do you need to use good words or words that you learned probably? When do you
Probably
need
to influence somebody during our conversation.
Yes, excellent, Mr. Ravi. When you have to influence somebody, when you have to impress someone, you need to be able to pull out that particular word from your memory. And what happens with words is that if it's not relevant to that particular environment or that context, you may not use it. And suddenly, when that context comes in, you have to be able to retrieve it and use it properly so that it doesn't seem new to you. And that is what you call as retrieval of the information to be able to influence either certain superiors, your board of directors, your boss, or maybe even at a presentation when you want to influence people, wherever. So that's retrieval. You look at what you call as metacognition. Now, this is one term. What would you mean by metacognition? Anyone out there? Just
I'm
30 seconds.
introspecting whatever has been done or thought about.
Wonderful, wonderful, Abhishek. Introspection,
Reflection also.
reflection. Have I thought? Yeah, someone else is also talking. Over to you.
Analyze.
Analyze. So when you say
Self-analyzation.
self-analysis,
Self-analyze.
yes, self-analysis. Wonderful, excellent, all of you.
Ma'am, sometimes what happens is we read a paragraph and
Mm.
then we realize that we've not actually read it. We've not, gathered the information which was there in the paragraph. We just read it for the sake of it. That is what thinking about thinking is.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Look at that. How many
But
examples you've given?
Ashna, that is lack of concentration. No, that doesn't come in metacognition.
No, no, but we are actually thinking about whether we thought of it or not. We just realized whether we actually gathered that information or not.
She's talking about going deep into it. And that's where long-term memory, short-term memory comes in, Ruchira, from where, you're reading it without thinking about the meaning of or the deeper meaning of something. That's when you feel okay. It's like saying, just read it for the sake of reading, take it at superficial level, or are you reading it deeply? Okay. Yes, your point in concentration also comes in over there. If you're concentrating deeper, maybe you look at two or three meanings into that. Am I right, Asta and Ruchita?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I
Thank
have a
you.
question there. When we talk
Okay.
about
Quickly,
thinking, yeah,
10 seconds. Yeah.
thinking about thinking, can we
Uh,
use the example of phobia here? A person is thinking about something that he may experience something, and later on again he's thinking about it, a phobia kind of a thing. Can we use?
a- Absolutely. Am I scared unnecessarily? Do I have, an unnecessary fear where he's trying to tell himself that this is not something for which I should be afraid? All right. And maybe I should not have a phobia. Correct? Correct, Bhavna? Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Correct.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhavna, and thank you, all the three of you. We are coming to metacognition. We'll spend a little more time on that in our next two slides. All right. And then you look at what you call. So, motivation. Do I wish to learn this subject? And why do I wish to learn this subject? If you feel that a particular topic is important to you, typically you'll see people coming in for a different kind of training. Now, today, everybody, if you know, is rushing to learn artificial intelligence. Am I right, everyone? All of us, yesterday I got two calls from two trainers. Rita, have you learned something on artificial intelligence? And where can I go to, study AI? Now, why are trainers feeling the need to study AI in training? Because somewhere they're feeling that the world is going ahead, and if I don't know how to use AI in my training, I will be left behind in the training fraternity. That's so much information also for you, my dear friends. Okay? And therefore, the desire to learn comes from, again, fear of missing out. So, what you're calling as FOMO, or an intrinsic interest in the subject or in the topic. Hey, I wish to know what this is. I wish to learn this. And then the second one, where you're saying, I'll learn this and use it on my job. Right? Third one is FOMO, where you say, if I don't learn this, my colleague will learn this and he will use it and I will be left out. That's your motivation example for all of you. Are we good with that? Yes. Now let's look at metacognition. Yes. Learning to learn, or when you talk about education, thinking about your own ability to be aware and control one's own cognitive processes. Now, this is a little deeper, my dear friends. Am I able to learn this topic? A lot of my students tell me that, I want to do marketing because I'm not good with numbers. So they have told themselves that finance requires numbers. And they also tell me I'm doing HR because I'm not good with numbers. I tell them that you're processing people's salary. You process incentives. Does that not require to be good in numericals? All right. So the way you're thinking about your own ability, like for a long time, I thought I couldn't do drawing, I couldn't do, I couldn't do painting, and then I realized that I don't have to be Hussein to be a painter. I can just paint. So that's metacognition, learning to learn. We've discussed this already. Now, key aspects of when you say, how will you use metacognition in education? I have a few examples in the next slide, but let's look at this quickly. Are you aware of how you think? You're conscious. This is how I learn. This is how I think. Am I thinking positively? Am I thinking negatively about this topic? Am I calculating? Okay. So when you become conscious of how you learn and what strategies are you using, you choose a certain approach. In your own mind, you're very clear or not clear. And from there, you approach your learning. Maybe you also think in terms of, do I know something about this topic? Is this the way I have understood it? And then from there, you move on. You're able to control your thinking. This is where we come to Ruchira's points. Okay? When you're saying control your thinking, also control your concentration. Am I thinking too much about external things or am I thinking about the topic? Am I right, Ruchira? You're the one? Okay, so thinking,
Yes, ma'am.
controlling your thinking, controlling your thinking. Then you come to what you call as self-regulation. That's what Bhavna spoke about. Regulating yourself or using your metacognitive language and whatever skills you have to decide that, okay, now I wish to learn it. Whatever I know about this particular topic, AI, I'm going to keep that as a foundation. And from there, I go to the next level of what you call as uh, of what you call as uh, learning about something. All right. Now, friends, my camera is going off on its own. I don't know why. Gurvinder sir will have to help me with that. Right now, it is on. Okay. So let's look at a few examples. When I say, what do I know about this topic? Is this the same as what I know, or is it different? So when the trainer is or the teacher is giving you some information, do I say that is this what I knew already, or is this new information coming? Yes, Bhavna ma'am.
Ma'am, I have a question there. Sometimes the trainees or the people they get anxious about what they are learning and everything. So that can be a part of metacognition.
That will become okay. That is a mix or a blend of what you call as cognitive load theory. Anxiety can come in different ways. All right. If you're anxious about your learning, then yes. And if you become aware that you're anxious about learning, then it becomes metacognition. So, am I stressed with regard to this subject? And what is my level of stress with regard to the subject? Here, this is metacognition when I know. But if the trainer notices that the subjects are anxious, it means that the trainer will have to help them to overcome their anxiety. That is where you come to cognitive load management. Bhavna, are you getting this?
Yeah.
If you haven't, then you can always tell me. We can discuss this later when we look at cognitive load management in the next 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit. So let me frame what actually I'm looking forward to, then we can discuss.
Okay. Tell me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
as of now, you can continue later on when you'll have time, we can discuss.
100%. Thank you so much, Bhavna.
Thank you.
That's maturity in learning. Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank
Bhavna.
you.
Okay. So we're looking at some examples over here quickly. I won't take much time. So when you're looking at a subject, you're thinking about how much you know and you're trying to differentiate whether it is different. Now, maybe what Ms. Bhavna is talking about is sometimes you feel that, this is artificial intelligence. Somebody has told you somewhere. When something new is coming to you, your mind struggles with the old information that you have and the new information. And you're very sure that the old information that you have is the correct one. That is when the trainee becomes anxious. All right. And he's struggling with the old information and with the new information. And he's asking whether it makes sense to him. That is where the trainer comes in. Okay. Planning a strategy where you blend the old information and the new information and make it interesting and understandable for the participants. All right. Am I on the right strategic plan? Monitoring and evaluating. Okay. Okay. Now, why metacognition? Why metacognition? I don't think I need to ask all of you all why metacognition. But unless a participant has done some degree of metacognition, it is not possible for new information to be absorbed by the person. So being aware of your own thinking styles help you to absorb new information and helps you to bring about new learning outcomes. It enhances your self-regulation. What I mean by that is if your mind is straying and if there is no concentration, if you know that you wish to learn and if you are able to do some analysis of your own thinking, you're also able to regulate your learning resources or your learning feelers, and you're able to grasp information because you've regulated yourself. All right, you can control your own thinking. It helps in increased problem solving skills and critical thinking. And because people use metacognition, they are thinking about their own thinking, they are able to retain the information, which will lead to lifelong learning. If I'm able to think, uh, I'm going to use a word like a dumb learner. If I simply take in what is given to me, I'm not doing metacognition. I'm just absorbing information without attaching any meaning to it, without thinking about the way I'm thinking. I'm not processing it in my mind. I'm just taking it in. And in fact, when the study of cognitive abilities was done, I'll just take 1 minute over here. It was primarily done on children. And when you say children, one big finding that comes out of metacognition and cognitive learning is that most of us think that at the age of 3 or 4, when you give information to children, they take it in just like that without using metacognition. But theories in cognitive learning say that even children have their own style of processing information. They don't just take information in a dumb manner. They also process information. They also use metacognition. Children's style of using metacognition is different from that of adults. That is why you and I are learning about metacognition as adults today, because we are adult trainers. All right? Okay. Now, for example, using metacognition strategies, these are some of the strategies that we as trainers can use. You can do pre-reading, you can monitor comprehension. So you ask questions to the participants. The participant will also ask questions. Then self-testing. I try to recall. A lot of times, even at home, we try to recall. Do I remember? And then you try to reflection on your learning. What did I learn today? What does it mean to me? All right. Did I learn about emotional intelligence today? Yes. There was a training session on EI. What did I learn today? How does it make sense to me? How emotionally intelligent am I? Were there instances where I didn't use EI and which I could now use what was taught to me in my training program? And then you set a goal that, yes, in the next 1 month, I'm going to use at least 3 three situations where I can use EI uh, that I learned in the learning strategy. That's where you set a goal for using what you learned. Friends, am I making sense? Am I making sense? Does this sound like the right example to all of
Yes,
you?
yes,
Yes, madam,
yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha.
Very,
Thank you.
it's a relatable one.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. Why did you say that? Why did you say that? Because, yeah, someone said relatable one.
I
And
said
that,
that, Bhavna.
yeah. Okay, Bhavna.
You're on mute, ma'am.
Sorry. I muted myself. Okay. Uh, so some key concepts, we said attention, we said memory. Memory I'll be discussing when we go on to module 3. Solving problems using, knowledge processes to solve problems and decision making. Okay. Now, some of the limitations to using metacognition, this also we can discuss a little later. We will now go to what we call as, okay, benefits of cognitive learning theory. We've discussed already. It helps you to deepen your memory. It gives you deeper understanding of things, and you're able to, increase your problem solving skills. All right. In terms of cognitive learning theory, some of the limitations are that there is limited scope. And if people do not have the motivation to learn, it's very difficult to give them knowledge. You know that, and I know that. I don't think we need to, try to understand what it means. If somebody doesn't want to learn, they say, no, you can take a horse to the pond, but you can't make the horse drink, right? Second is different people have different ways of absorbing cognitive information. Again, the IQ, EQ thing comes in, and concentration issues also. So, when you're giving cognitive knowledge, if you're not conscious of individual differences in learning, it's a little difficult to make the learning permanent. All right? Okay. That's where we go into, the last part of cognitive learning. We said use active learning, space out the information, encourage reflection, and let people work together when they are into cognitive learning. Some degree of, project learning, or when they write reports, let them write in teams, let them study together, study groups. That's where you can make cognitive learning better and overcome the limitations. All
Ma'am,
right? Yeah.
ma'am, all you can say that is the participation, involvement of the trainees, right? Means
Involvement of the trainee, and okay, when you're talking about motivation to learn, not only the involvement, but also somebody's uh, ability to concentrate on a learning because he doesn't want to learn or he either wants to learn. So my desire, my wish to learn.
okay.
Okay, my wish to learn. No, I don't think you're convinced. I don't think
Ma'am,
I can see that in your eyes and on your face. What was your question?
I'll ask later. It's okay, ma'am. It's just continue.
Okay. A little about Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory, where he's talking that we learn by observing the actions, behavior, and consequences of others. I can just give you one example about this. Today, in the Times of India, Hindustan Times, and any other newspaper, you have one page ads or pictures of who. Someone became a hero in the last 3 days. Who was that? Last 3 days, somebody became a hero
Um,
overnight.
Indian
Jemima.
female
ma'am,
cricketers.
that
Jemima,
Jemima Rodriguez.
129
Jemima.
not out.
Jemima.
Jemima,
Jamie Rodriguez.
Jemima.
eh,
Jemima.
Now everyone woke up. Yes. Thank you for that, my dear friends. And today, I'm very, very sure that a lot of young ladies want to be cricketers. A lot of young ladies want to be cricketers, want to be like Jamima, want to join the Indian cricket team. You observe the actions of people who do well and you learn from them. So the consequences, they won. And anytime a positive outcome wants people to learn that particular thing. If you see that people are learning artificial intelligence in training and getting more offers in training, 100% all the trainers will go into AI into learning. I'm giving an example close to your, profession, my dear friends. All right. If everybody knows that by joining the ISTD PGP course, you'll get, you'll become a better trainer, then more people after you will join the program. But having said that, we all look at each other and we learn. All right. That's your social cognitive theory in learning. Okay. We've done this. When you're talking of cognitive methods of learning, we are talking about off the job training methods. And we'll go into this when later on you actually when you go into training methods. Okay, verbal information, written information, relationships about between certain concepts. That's how cognitive methods are used in training, in off the job training. All right, meaning in a classroom. All right, behavior methods I will not talk about right now, but all I would say is training must motivate people. Unless the trainer or the training motivates people, only then people will participate and they will use the learning in the work. That's also important. That's called transfer of learning. A lot of, there's an entire subject called learning transfer. You learn everything in the training program. But are you using that at the workplace? That's your learning motivation. All right? Okay. Uh, Fine. Friends, look at some of the cognitive learning methods. We are talking about the lecture method. We spoke about it when I said classroom methods. Then, when you reflect on what you learned, so maybe through a group discussion or through a brainstorming session, when whatever was learned is actually, discussed over again, thinking about the issue. So maybe you have you have. I'm just talking aloud of certain training methods. You have something called a chat group where you're exchanging, maybe even on WhatsApp when you're discussing, or when you, what can I say? Uh, what's the word that you have? When you have a focused group discussion or a cattle corral, inner circle, outside the corral, or you're also imagining something that you did through a story, through a visual presentation. All these are cognitive learning methods which are used to transfer knowledge. All right? Okay. Some more examples: simulation, business games, case studies. When actually you're making a story out of something that happened in the organization and that is discussed in the class, this is a cognitive method. Role play. When you're playing out a certain situation or even playing out a case split into a role play and you are actually discussing, debriefing the role play, that becomes a cognitive method of training. All right. Okay. So this was so much that we were supposed to cover the last week. Any questions before I come to cognitive load theory? Over to you, my dear friends. Over to you.
Ma'am, I have a query. Uh,
Yes.
the one that you mentioned that, you should space it out, the training.
Huh.
What exactly do we mean by that when we say space it out?
Um, if I had taught you cognitive learning, then cognitive load theory, then memory techniques, training techniques, behavioral training, a little on artificial intelligence, all in 1 day's time or half a day's time. Would you have absorbed it?
Yeah, got it, got it. Okay. Yeah.
Got it? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank
So
you.
that's what you're talking about when you space out learning. And adults need more spacing as compared to, uh, you know, uh, as compared to what you call as children. Children still can take information because children sometimes can't say no. But when you and I, we have a choice to shut off the information sometimes. We'll say, "Baad mein karenge," right? Now that is spacing out the training. Any complicated concept or any heavy concept, if you space it out for people, then it's like calling it chunking, and I'll come to that now. When you're giving information to people in chunks, thoda thoda at a time, uh, then people will not get a stomach upset after having eating too much of a good thing. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
And here, in fact, you have made it easier for me to discuss the concept of cognitive load management. Over to you, my dear friends. And those of us who have kind of not spoken so far for fear of whatever, I don't know, or just like that. If someone can tell me, what do you mean by this before I go further? 30 seconds. What would you mean?
Over learning.
Over learning. Okay.
Pacing
I'll,
out your con content or the learnings.
okay. Pacing out content, over learning. All right.
Overloading the information part of it.
Overloading the information. Yes, Ruchi.
Burdening them with too much of information.
Extra information.
Overburdening.
Maybe the thoughts of the person.
Okay. Thought of the.
Using your
Overwhelming.
self-reflection and metacognition to understand your own limits and capability to manage how and how much you learn.
Okay. Thank you so much, my dear
Overthinking.
friends. Overthinking. Everything that you have said.
Maybe from the feedback,
Prioritization.
you are like managing things through feedbacks only we get to know how we are managing things like cognitive load management.
Okay. So we are looking at cognitive in this, I mean, when we're discussing cognitive load management, these are some of the things that we look at. You can read it up, or in fact, for your own comfort. Of course, I'll be sending you this PowerPoint. You can make points about this because these are all the things that, are important to all of us. So when you're talking of a cognitive load or the cognitive load theory, it's a theory that focuses on how much can the human brain process. The human brain can process information, and that information processing has to lead to the learning process. So for example, if you are a trainer, you give me information, and then that information is processed by me in my brain, and then it goes on into my learning processes. So it's a two-step process. So how much have I learned? You gave me a lot of information. But was I able to store all of that, and will I be able to use all of that? That is your cognitive load theory. So look at what all of you said. Everything that you have said is over here. When you exceed the brain's processing capacity, instead of adding positivity or adding more learning, it can also have a negative effect on our ability to effectively acquire, which means that the brain will reject information. Your learning curve will reject information. And it's quite possible, uh, this is not what anybody said, this is something that I've said, you could develop a dislike. I could develop a dislike to the particular subject because you're giving me too much information. I may say, this is very complicated, Baba. I don't want to learn it. I'm learning it when I'm ready. Happens, my dear friends. It has happened to all of us at a particular time
Yeah.
of learning. All right. So therefore, Therefore, my dear friend asked me, how do you handle this? You have to design your learning experiences that don't overburden. Some of you use the word overburdening information. When you give knowledge to people, you have to be particular that you do not burden your cognitive functions and do not tax people's working memory. There is something called memory. Memory is also a psychological process and it can function. Now, within memory, there is also something called working memory. Now, what would you mean by working memory? How much of your memory will work towards retaining that information? And in such a case, it is very, very important for all of us as teachers, as trainers, as gurus, or whatever, that we do not overburden our trainees to by giving them too much information, which will be lost, and it leads to zero learning. Think about it. Think about it. Okay, and we can have a debate on this maybe at 12:25 or 12:20. Now, there were two people who studied cognitive load management, and George Miller. George Miller came up with the law. He says that through his research, all of us can hold about approximately 7 pieces of information in something that you call as short-term memory, meaning that we can hold these 7 pieces of information. So how much information you give to people so that they can retain it in their short-term memory. Ideally speaking, I would give 4 or 5 pieces of information and revise those pieces so that it leads to 7 pieces of information. Always give people a little less than what they can absorb. What do we do as trainers? We want to finish the curriculum, we want to finish the information, so we overload, or we think that everybody can take it. All right? And then John Sweller, an Australian educational psychologist, proposed a variety of principles which aimed at reducing cognitive load. He said you reduce the cognitive load. And that's where his principle. So he said that you need to mentally process the information. If you're giving a lot of complicated information, everything, for example, if I look at emotional intelligence, my favorite example is communication skills training. There is so much information in communication skills. There is body language, there is verbal communication, there is written communication. In verbal communication, also, there is so much information that you have to speak about words, you have to speak about language, tone, approach to the other person, presentation skills, all of that. So if you're telling somebody about communication skills, you have to ensure that you split up that information and decide what to give when. Otherwise, it becomes a very complex task. And then you have not reached anywhere. You're just giving information without that person retaining the information. Cookery, for example. Think about making a cup of tea, simple information. But if you have to cook a meal for, let's say, 20 people coming to your house, and somebody is telling you what to do and tells you all the dishes at the same time, then it becomes complex information. All right? So that's where you're looking at cognitive load. Now, pay attention, my dear friends. We are looking at the types of cognitive load. When you say you're putting information, there are 3 types of cognitive load, and we need to discuss these 3 types of cognitive load. The first one, which we talk about, is the intrinsic load. Intrinsic load. So when you're talking about intrinsic load, okay, when you're giving an abstract topic, for example, let's take when you're talking about today, a lot of people do spiritual training. And when you're talking about spirituality, when you're talking about things such as meditation or transcendental meditation, all right, If you give too much information, the person will maybe listen to everything, read up everything, but will not go home and use up that. When you're giving internally, when the person has too much information, it becomes an intrinsic load. Are we getting this? And more intrinsic load when the topic is more complex. Okay? Yeah. Uh, has somebody put a question in this to me? No, I was just looking at your chat box. The second type of load is what you call when you're teaching somebody, it's the extraneous load. Would someone like to take a chance here? I don't like to talk to a quiet class. It becomes very, very, very monotonous for me also, and it'll be monotonous for you also. Over to you, friends. What would you mean by an extraneous load? And can you give me an example?
It could be like a very jazzy presentation with lots of moving elements,
Animated, lot
colors.
of animation, lot of
Distractions.
various element distraction.
Yes.
It's self-explanatory, ma'am,
Small
with
fonts,
example.
entirely the page is fully loaded.
Copied all the entire book in the presentation, and
Hmm.
we're just running the presentation, so that will not help me learn or absorb what the presentation is meant for.
It could
Excellent.
Too
also
much
be an
verbose.
environment where a classroom is noisy and there's too many things going around the classroom,
Yeah.
which makes it
Yeah.
difficult to concentrate.
100%.
Maybe
The
the body
lighting
language
is
of
not proper.
the
Yeah,
Presentation
body.
is,
Please go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Okay, I had 2 points that if the lighting of the room is not proper, I have presentations wherein I have videos to show, and the video will not serve the purpose because I'm not able to look at it in its exact original form. So that was one thing. Please, Bhavna.
Thank you. Thank you,
Also,
Aditi.
Okay,
Vivek here.
see,
Another
like,
one, I think Vikas Agarwal speaking, madam. Another is when the trainer or the instructor, he doesn't take pauses. So one information is over and immediately you shift on to the next information. So that creates a lot of cognitive load that I have felt during my presentations. So you
Yes.
have to take pauses of a specified period of time.
Okay. 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 Now there is a debate there whether it's an intrinsic load or an extraneous load. It could be both. It could be both. Okay. Bhavna, in one sentence, you can complete what you wanted to say because there are others.
As it has mentioned, it's mentioned distracting elements. So can we include the body language of the trainer and the dressing sense of the trainer also?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. You go in very garish outfits. The participants are looking at you and thinking about so many other things. Yes,
And the
of course.
body language too.
Body language. Yes. That's an extraneous load. Yeah. We have Janvi and Sonali. 15 seconds each, my dear friends. Yeah.
Ma'am,
So
actually, I had
Janvi,
a
yeah.
question.
Huh.
So I wanted to ask, let's say if the presentation or if the template is very AI generated, because these days it's easier to understand if something is AI generated or not. So does that count as an extraneous load? Because people might think that, oh, all of this is AI generated, so I am not very much interested in it.
Possible. Possible depending on what kind of prompts you have given to AI to make your presentation clearer, more interesting, and understandable and simple. Then, it will not become an extraneous load. But if
Depend
you have
on the
not
audience also, right? What is the
depending,
kind of audience it is?
yes,
If
audience perception also.
more, yeah, more techno-friendly audience will welcome it as
Yeah,
a change,
thank you.
vice
Who
versa.
said that? And I'm very happy that somebody answered it this way. Okay,
Yes. Thank you,
Sonali,
ma'am. Thank
quick.
you, Anuradha.
Thank you, Anubhav. Yeah, Sonali, quickly, so that then we
yes, I
can.
just want to understand also if maybe the trainer has asked you to do a quiz, and parallelly while you're doing the quiz, they are also showing some slides or videos running. So can that also be considered as an extraneous
Yes,
load?
if it is complicated for the trainee, if it is difficult to concentrate, it
Okay.
does become an extraneous load. Yes, 100%. Vivek ji, you want to say, was it the same thing or was it something new that you wanted to say,
Yeah,
sir?
I just am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to add that things if we took a cognitive load management in a serious way, then we can avoid the things like in our program we have a 4 papers on a one day, and that again for the 45 minutes, that creates some intrinsic load as well as extrinsic load as well. So that
Okay.
is the most important thing, because I understand from today's morning actually.
Yes, definitely. And yes, so there must be reasons why it is on a particular day, but you've given a good example of extraneous load, also intrinsic load. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. Germane load. So now we all know very well what is intrinsic, and extraneous load. Let's look at what you call as germane load. Now, when you're talking about germane load, it's a kind of primarily, I would say it's a desirable load. That means you'll have to put some load on your mind or on your brain to connect the dots to be able to understand a particular topic. So you say, okay, fine. I know so much about emotional intelligence. I know that the Dalai Lama spoke about destructive emotions. But now, when Daniel Goleman speaks about emotional maturity, I am able to connect these two things and to be able to understand emotional intelligence and develop emotional maturity. That means you've already read something on Buddhism which speaks about EI but with different terms. And then you're reading a book or taking training on EI, EI is emotional intelligence, to match the two. Now, does that become a good example of germane load? New information and existing knowledge. What I know and what comes to me together. It can happen in cooking, it can happen in something that you're putting together, it can happen when you're reading up a new subject. All right, all of this together. For example, now when I'm teaching international human resource management, I draw a lot on students' internship experiences and on their basic subject HRM and performance management. So that becomes germane load and people are able to understand it better. Now, now this is one particular example where this is talking about extraneous load. We've already discussed this topic, so you can read it up when I send you the slides. Let's not, I mean, I would not, or maybe when I finish the session when we have a time, but digital environment also can create both uh, extraneous load and sometimes it can also create germane load. Okay, here is a case study which is an example of pacing. When you spoke about pacing out information, you give people information that is enough for people to take at a particular time. Now, how do you manage intrinsic load and how do you minimize the extraneous load? And how do you also maximize the germane load? All of you, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Yes, someone asked me a
Ma'am, I
question.
just have,
Simplifying.
sorry. Ma'am, here I wanted to elaborate on Janvi's question, wherein
Ah,
she asked about this AI thing. So
hmm,
AI being a new term and something which is going to be relevant and will stay with us, can
hmm.
we define it more as a germane load than the
Ab-
intrinsic?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
It's
that
new
was not
information.
extraneous, but it was more of germane
Video
because
आ रही थी ना?
sooner or
Yeah.
later,
नहीं आ रही?
audience need to get into it, right?
Yeah. There are two things. Now, if you have made, see, there are two examples of it. When you're talking about preparing slides through AI, if Janvi uses and connects with the participants to tell them, look, friends, I have generated this through AI. And this is something that you as trainees will find very useful in the future. And the same slides. And if her slides are good and to the topic, then it will become a germane note. Correct? Am I right, Anuradha? But if the slides are very complicated and AI and the prompts have not been able to give you the slides that look desirable to the trainees, it could create an extraneous note. Are we getting this, Anuradha? Yes. how you use your material to project it to the candidates and making the subject easier for them to understand. That is where your German load will help you. Okay? Have I made this clear? Miss Anuradha?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, well, okay. So this is how you would manage. Now let's look at how do you use information. Now, we discussed what you call as working memory of people. Working memory. How much can my memory retain and how much can my memory process the information that is being given to you? Okay. So sometimes your learning material is very complex. If it is not simple, then it creates too much intrinsic load. Sometimes very simple things such as the font of a book or the font used in the slides or the sentence structure or if the information doesn't have too many paragraphs or it is all put together in one paragraph or if your examples are at a higher level more than them being simple. So you have to go from the simple to the complex. In such a case, the information overwhelms your working memory. Okay? And then the working memory becomes burdened with irrelevant information. Suppose right now I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you about cognitive methods of training. If I try to build in behavioral training or skilled training, okay, into this, which is a different subject altogether, you will become confused. And your mind would say, right now, Rita, please stick to cognitive learning methods and let's not go into anything else altogether. If I try to include digital. So therefore, to be able to process or to manage all these loads, you also have to think of how much the working memory can retain. Now let's look at some of the ways in which you can reduce intrinsic load. This is where I was talking about. Make chunks of your information. Small bites. You're also calling them bites of information, right? Okay. Give them as much as you can take. You can say module 1, module 2, module 3. You can make it a 15-minute, half an hour thing. And then give some time for it to be absorbed. Use some questions to revise and then move on to the next part of the information. Use visual aids. I read the statement somewhere where it said, a picture can say 1,000 words. I love this phrase when I teach my students presentation skills. You use one picture instead of using 10 pictures and use only 2 words next to that. For example, you look at that ad, hungry kya? And then you have that big picture of Swiggy or Zomato or whatever. It says everything, right? Simplify your information. Simplify. Make your information very simple to understand. Start at the basics. Everybody likes to have information which is simplified to them. Shakespeare can take a back seat for some time. Add context. Try to give examples. When I say add context, and give examples that are relevant to the learners. Over here, if I use more examples about the training setup, all of you will be motivated to learn, right? And then somewhere in the whole process, use hands-on activities. Teach, ask them to do an activity. Teach, ask them to do an activity. That way, the load of the information becomes less for people. Okay? You then have what you call as minimizing extraneous load. We discussed this at length, my dear friends. And I think by now you have already understood that you have to minimize the distractions. You have to give very clear instructions. Avoid redundant information. Avoid information that's already given. And therefore, I'm not going to repeat what you told me about extraneous loads and give them support to understand. Help people when they are not able to understand something. Over there, you go deeper, individually look at participants and help them to clear their doubts. if that doubt remains in even one participant's mind, then it will be difficult for that person to go further. Correct? Yeah? Okay. Now, these are some examples, or this is a strategy that your John Meller used. He said, use examples, use worked examples so that you can show them the solutions. First, you show them an example with the worked solution, then you give them a problem to solve. Okay? Increase independent problem solving, because you'll have to encourage people to solve problems on their own. Inessential information you don't give them. And essential information which is required to be used, you can give it together. Simplify complex information and encourage your students or your trainees to imagine, to create stories, to make pictures in their own minds. And that way you would be able to reduce the information which is which is heavy cognitive. Otherwise, it will lead to reduced comprehension. Participants will get frustrated and stressed. That is what one of you were asking me, right? When they are stressed, when they are anxious. Stereotyping, it might lead to stereotyping, low retention, and ineffective and impaired performance. So you say, when you can't learn something, you'll say that I don't want the information because the information is not good enough. You remember Aesop's fable? The grapes are sour. Couldn't reach them, you say, I don't want the grapes. They are sour. All right? Okay. And when you're talking about germane load, I would just like to show you the picture of this crow who is drinking water to be able to, by throwing in pebbles. So when you activate prior knowledge, we'll discuss germane load again at length in our next session to summarize, and then we'll go on to the next topic, that is memory. To maximize germane knowledge, this is my last sentence and slides, you have to activate a person's prior knowledge through metacognition, give them ample time for reflection. So let there be brainstorming, group discussion so that people can discuss with each other, discuss with you. Let them elaborate the topic, let them give their own examples, and use scenario-based learning. Help them to use scenario-based learning and give them feedback. Give them feedback so that they are able to connect the learning with what they have already learned about a subject earlier. With that, my dear friends, we'll stop today. If there is any question, you can
Ma'am,
ask, or you can tell me. Last
um,
30 seconds only. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I just wanted to just get to know about you that for that, just like I want to give a session as a trainer. So, for me, how would I know that it's going like it's a perfect session from my side? Means gradually I will get to know about my loopholes, na ki haan, there I was lacking, there I have to make changes in my style of giving training. So, how I know means these things where I will get to know.
Okay, there is nothing like a perfect session. Sessions are always can be better. So if it's been a good session, you think about, see how much people have learned. So keep giving short, questions or quizzes or tests in the middle of the session to understand, or discussion, so that people can uh, answer back. That will be your feedback. Ask direct questions. Are you understanding? Is anyone feeling left out? Have you understood? Yeah, that is where you can. And we can discuss it at great length later on, because yes, there's nothing like a perfect session. And the eyes of your participants will give you feedback. 100%. Look into their eyes, you'll know. Yeah. Thank you, Ruchira.
Ma'am,
Over to you. Yeah.
ma'am, you can see our eyes are giving a feedback that your
No,
session was
ma'am.
really great.
Thank you.
You can see
And